Well, hello, excellent people. It is not good morning today. I actually did record a good morning message, and then I've been having significant technical difficulties with it. So I'm going to do two things. I'm going to speak again about the same topic, but also I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with that issue because it fits right into my topic. So today I want to talk about, is your time valuable? Or let me ask you this as a question is, do you value your time? Because I believe that many people do not properly value their time. In fact, I would go so far as to say time is a resource that should be managed sustainably and spent wisely like any other valuable resource. And so that's the general gist of where we're going with this. So my very quick sort of like frustrating story is my time was definitely not managed as well as I would have liked this morning. And it really did, it upset me. It got me frustrated because I have a lot that I have to do with my time. And when I get hung up on stuff that frankly seems unnecessary, it can be, it really derails the process. So I filmed this and tried to upload it and it failed. Then tried to upload it to my computer and buffer it and edit it all and just get all the pre-processing done on my computer, and wasn't able to get it done even disregarding the posting on the internet. So I am not sufficiently technically savvy to know why that was happening, although I have some suspicions that I will relate at a later time. But right now, what I'm going to do as a new test is I'm actually recording this straight in the LinkedIn platform. And my hope is that it will be much smoother this way. So that actually leads me to a bit of very quick advice that I think is important is, if there is a way to do a task, or let's say this, if there are two ways to do a task, and one way is smooth and one way is not, and they have appreciably similar results, right? If you really got down into the fine grain, you can find differences in the results. But let's say they're appreciably similar, right? Which method should you use? And let me go a little bit further and say, what if your method that you are most familiar with is the less smooth of the two? So now the question has two layers. It's which method should you use, and are you willing to learn a new method if it is appreciably smoother with comparable results? And my answer to you should be, do the thing that is smoother when the results are comparable, even if that means going through the discomfort and the initial, like very, very short term slowdown of learning the new method. So in this situation, I mean, the record button works pretty much the same on LinkedIn that it does on the primary camera hardware, but it's just not what I'm used to. Okay. So it's a very low resolution example, but it is a sufficient example. So but this does lead me right into what I want to talk about, which is all the people out there who don't properly value their time. Okay. So you have people who will drive all the way across town for a free thing and spend hours of their time and however much money on gas, and maybe buy buy some fast food along the way that they wouldn't have bought, they would have eaten at home, and spend all this. They'll actually spend extra money and a lot of extra time to have a thing that is free. And I believe that is a very inaccurate calculus. And I believe that's a calculus that sets you up for frustration and even failure, because it results in one particular thing, which is your time is short, but you don't know why. Or your time is short, but you don't know where your time went. And you're always fighting a losing game. You're always in a deficit when it comes to free time, or we'll call it time as energy, right? So you're always in an energy time deficit. And I think that that's a problem. And I think that one of the easiest way to solve that problem is to be much more honest about what is your time worth. So let's ask this question in a mathematical calculus once again. What do you make per hour? Just whatever it is, let's say you've got a salary and you just break it down. What do you make per hour, right? If you were using that metric and a thing was free and you wanted to drive across town to get that free thing, and you knew that it was going to take you an hour one way to drive, an hour of talking to that person, and then an hour back, you've got 3 hours. So now that thing that is free costs 3 times your hourly wage, right? Granted, there's some opportunity cost things in there. There's a lot of ways that you can kind of get this to be a much more fine-grained number, but back to my earlier point, this is sufficient for the example. So now your free thing costs, let's say you make $15 an hour, your free thing costs $45, okay? That still isn't counting the gas, like I said, that still isn't counting the fast food. And I believe that this is an important thing to recognize is what does your time actually cost and how are you spending your time? Because I personally value time more than money most of the time. Now, there are going to be situations where money is going to get my attention, but part of that I think comes from I make enough money. I don't make enough money to go on vacation all the time, and I work quite a lot, but I make enough money that I'm not desperate. So I think that if I were in a situation where I were desperate, it would be different. And I want to acknowledge that because I think that that's a legitimate counterpoint. And so perhaps we can talk either in the comments or perhaps we can talk some other time about how do you manage your time when money is truly more important because you're just trying to make ends meet. And I think that'd be a really valuable conversation to have because I personally can't bring a lot to the table on that. I have the good fortune of I've had a lot of bad things happen to me in my life, but I've never been that level of desperate. And that's a luxury, and I recognize that. And I appreciate that. And I am trying in this moment as I talk about this to be wise to my own opportunities. But at the same time, that leads me to ask the question of, okay, if I'm going to honor my opportunities that have been presented to me, then I need to value my time accordingly. So, talking about time, talking about valuing your time, let me give you an example of when something seems free and isn't, because I think this is a good example when thinking about time value. Let's say you're doing business with a service company and you're a homeowner or maybe you have a vehicle. Vehicles are a great thing, right? Because lots of service companies offer free estimates. You call them up, they send a person out, that person comes, person tells you what they think they can do, the person tells you what they think it would cost, but they don't charge you for their time, right? But the company accrues a cost as far as fuel for that person to travel, maintenance of that vehicle, the education of that individual to get them up to that level, the actual man hours that person is spending, et cetera, right? And there's a lot of actual cost inherent in that visit, but they don't charge you for it. And I believe that one of two things is going to happen when a company does that. A, the company is actually doing a very poor job of accounting for their budgeting and is going to be unprofitable and is eventually going to go out of business because they're unprofitable. Or B, that company is actually passing on the cost of their free consults to the people who do business with them. So what ends up happening is you, as the person who calls them up, get a free consult, but then you don't do business with them. But then someone else does business with them and their rates, their hourly rates, or however they factor their rates, account for an expectation of spending X amount of hours every month or every week on free consults. And then you are subsidizing the people who don't pay. Okay, what can we take from this? I'm not really sure. I don't have a strong thing I want to take from it, but I just want to show you yet again, this is a matter of, I guess the big thing to recognize here is this company appears on face value to not be valuing their time because they're giving away their time for free, and yet they're charging someone for the time. So it's actually being done on the back end. And I think that's not a bad thing. I think that that's actually a really good lesson there is there's nothing wrong with spending your time in ways that don't make money in the short term, but think about how you spend your time and think about whether the way that you spend your time gets you where you want to be going, whether that's financial, emotional, personal, doesn't matter. So that's what I'm imploring you to do is consider that your time is a resource that should be spent wisely, that should be managed sustainably, that should be used intentionally, and see where that gets you.